This is just some of the performance metrics we use in terms of measuring our progress and our end state that we are going for. Key success to Hanford and the contractors is to complete our Recovery Act projects and activities, do what we said we were going to do by the cost we said we were going to do it, and by September 2011. That is, the environmental management program is to complete all this work by September 2011, basically a year from now. We are on track to complete all this work, and it'll go a long way in terms of showing that the Hanford cleanup is a good investment, both to the folks at headquarters in the Department of Energy, but also our senators and representatives that represent the area, not only Washington, but Oregon. Just a footnote here on how another key goal of the environmental management program is shrinking the active footprint of cleanup across the complex, and that is a commitment that DOE has made to Congress and to the White House in terms of doing cleanup so that the area needed to be cleaned up is reduced over time. So this is a depiction of the plan we have to complete the cleanup activities along the outer portions of the site, then going towards the inner portion of the site called the river corridor, and then eventually to the Central Plateau. So with Recovery Act funds, we're doing cleanup in the National Reach Monument, basically, up here, and then by 2011, we'll complete that cleanup and then focus along the river corridor and then get to the Central Plateau by 2015. Again, we are on track to complete the work as required by the statute and by environmental management leadership at headquarters. The other thing that we've gotten permission to do is a lot of this work will be done below the anticipated cost that we originally planned for. We're going to be allowed to use those savings to do more cleanup work in 2012. So headquarters has given us the green light, and we're incentivizing the contractors to be as efficient as we can in order to use additional Recovery Act, or use those saved Recovery Act dollars in 2012 to do more cleanup. We're also looking at life after Recovery Act. So when we're done spending the bulk of the money in September 2011, we're down to our appropriations, whatever we get for fiscal year 2012 in terms of congressional appropriations. And so that will be a reduction in terms of the dollars we're spending at the Hanford site for cleanup. And we're planning workforce transition and looking at ways with headquarters to minimize any adverse impacts we have to the workforce as we reduce workforce to accommodate the available dollars we get from Congress. If you want more about Recovery Act, there is just tons of information. You could start at hanford.gov and go to the Recovery Act link, and then it takes you to all sorts of places in terms of looking at how Department of Energy spending Recovery Act funds, Hanford, and then recoveryact.gov in terms of other projects that are being funded by the Stimulus Act. And there's a handy information page on recoveryact.gov that you could click a state like Washington, and then you could see all the projects that are being funded through this Recovery Act, not just here at the Hanford, but also highway projects, commuter projects, you know, those type of things across the state of Washington. So with that, I am done. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
You bet. Yeah, get my stuff out of there.
Thanks a lot, Matt. Our next speaker is Tom Fletcher. Tom is the Federal Project Manager for the Office of River Protection Recovery Act. Tom joined the Department of Energy in July of 2006. Prior to that, he worked as an engineer for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and as project manager for a private construction firm. He joined the DOE as a project controls officer for the groundwater and Vados Zone Project. I'm not quite sure if I'm saying that right. I should have checked that before. Sorry. In 2008, he was selected as the Federal Project Director for the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act work scope. He is responsible for monitoring all project requirements, especially those associated with design, construction, and commissioning operations, and has interfaced responsibilities with DOE headquarters. Tom has a BS and an MS in civil engineering from Washington State University. Just for equal time, go Cougs. Always like the land-grant universities. So, as a professional engineer and certified project management professional, please help me welcome Tom Fletcher.
I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Bill and the Chamber of Commerce to allow us to come up and do this presentation. It is my pleasure to be able to stand up here today and depict where we are as the Office of River Protection for Recovery Act and what it has done for this project. With that, a little bit about this. One of the key attributes that Matt mentioned was that we had newly awarded contracts, what allowed us to be basically shovel-ready, as said at headquarters, to be able to execute the work scope without creating new contracts or allowing new contracts to be placed. We could just pull that work scope from the future forward with the additional funds. So with the tank farm operating contract, which is a newly awarded $7.1 billion contract over a 10-year time frame, with a focus on maintaining the tanks, reducing the risk with the 53 million gallons within those tanks, and preparing it for treatment at waste treatment plant, this allowed us to pull some of those infrastructure upgrades that were focused in the 2013, 14, 15 through 17 time frame forward into the near term to allow us to reduce that bow wave that was coming up. Just a little background, I don't know, there are 177 tanks, 149 of those are single shell tanks, some dating back to the 1940s. There are 28 double shell tanks, which were built between 1968 and 1986. These tanks range anywhere from 55,000 gallons up to 1 million gallons. When you look at a 1 million gallon tank in comparison to a basketball court, you see that up there. It basically takes up the whole basketball court and is 49 feet tall. So we're talking very large tanks. 67 of these tanks are presumed leakers. So one of the keys is how do we stage this and how do we get ready to deliver that waste out of those single shell tanks over to the double shell tanks and finally over to the vitrification plant for vitrification in the 2019 timeframe during the startup of that plant. Office of River Protection was given $326 million to do that. As of June, we had spent 107 of that. The thing we're a little different on is everybody else in the complex, or the majority of the complex, was focused on footprint reduction, creating jobs first, then footprint reduction and life cycle cost savings. The Office of River Protection has a slightly different mission than what RL has, which is cleaning up the site. We are basically getting ready to operate the waste treatment plant and treat that 53 million gallons of waste. In order to do that, there are a significant number of upgrades that need to be done. So we positioned ourselves to basically take this funds and rather than do footprint reduction, reinvest in our infrastructure so that we are ready to deliver a sustained and reliable feed to that waste treatment plant in 2019. So you can see some of the key objectives that we have, which are tank farm infrastructure upgrades, facility life extension. There's two key ones there. That's 242A evaporator and the 222S laboratory. Preparing the feed for waste treatment plant, which really deals with doing the strategic planning and the mixer pump designs and getting ready to blend that waste into a consistent, reliable feed, and then creating a safer and more environmentally friendly workplace. And really that deals with worker safety. That was take some of the obstacles that are in our single shell tanks that are obsolete, just sitting there, possible health hazards or environmental risks, and get those removed and disposed of in our environmental restoration facility. As we talked about jobs being the #1 priority, in the end, the approximate jobs that will be saved over the Recovery Act will be about 700 jobs with the Office of River Protection. If you look at the June data, we had 414 FTEs, or in the March data, in federalreporting.gov, we had 414 FTEs, including both the prime and the subcontractor. The key here is that we are creating the next generation of workforce. We are carefully hiring direct hires such that those direct hires will be able to be maintained as long as we see our funding forecast as it is, such that the attrition rate, as it goes down, we're hiring those new people. So we're getting a unique opportunity here to train that next generation of workforce, these new hires, under the experience of the old workforce as they transition out.